Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Bree.
We're really excited tonight. We have a little bit of a special conversation. We have Anna here with us to just discuss what it looks like to be good stewards of our health.
Yes, I'm super excited for this conversation. Let me just introduce Anna. So, Anna McLaughlin empowers Christian women, entrepreneurs, and homeschool mamas to uncover and live out their divine purpose. Connect with her if you're ready to love your life while making an eternal impact, both at home and beyond, even in the midst of the fullness of daily life. I am so excited to talk to you tonight because, look, all three of us sitting right here are moms, wives, homeschoolers, entrepreneurs. We all three work, and we're all three stewarding our health. So, what does that look like for you, Anna? And tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Yes. So I'm so glad to be here, first of all. You 2 are lovely, and I've been so looking forward to this conversation. So, when we talk about stewardship, that's something that's such a passion of mine because I think it really reflects that this is not a destination that we necessarily are that we're going to arrive at. There's no black and white, right and wrong. You did it or you didn't. It's a journey that we're all on. And so the goal is improvement day by day. The goal is to walk out the parable of the talents where we invest what God has given us, which includes our bodies, which includes our minds, and we daily endeavor to do a little bit better than the day before at taking care of this temple that he has invested in us for this time here on earth. As far as a little bit about me, a homeschool mama, as you said. My kids are ages 6 to 12, and I've been in business for myself and with my husband since our kids were teeny tiny. So juggling these different plates in the air, trying to keep them from falling has been something that we've been walking out to varying degrees of health and success over the years, but it's something that I've just found a lot of joy in and just committing to the process and being able to celebrate, "Okay, we're better than we were last year. Okay, what can we do next?" So I think that's what's going to be so much fun about this conversation is it's like, what can we do differently? And those tiny changes are really where the magic happens.
I love it. I do that too in so many aspects of life and business and homeschooling and being a mom and a wife. And I mean, can't I just feel like I can always improve? Let's just
Yeah.
keep learning and growing.
I
Mhm. That's right.
also love your perspective, what you're saying, because so much of, at least my experience in the crunchy community, if you want to call it that, at the beginning can really be instigated by fear. So a lot of, in the natural world, we do give Western medicine or lots of different practices a hard time because it's fear-based. But I
Mhm.
also saw a lot of that in this community as well when I first came in. And at least in my heart, there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of black holes, and I love your encouragement to invest and steward these things rather than focusing on the fear, what not to
Mhm.
do, but the focus on how can we better honor God with these things, make better choices, invest better in these areas. So I love
Mhm.
that. It's very encouraging.
Yes. Yeah, it's been helpful to me, and I resonate so much with what you said, Bree, because I remember when I first started this walk, I was just weeks postpartum, and I was feeling with our first baby, so about 12 years ago, and
Mhm.
feeling so very sick because between her birth and all the pasta that everybody brings you when you're a new mom, my gluten sensitivity that I never knew about all of a sudden just exploded. And so I felt just terrible with every bit of food that I ate. And then as I was working with a chiropractor at the time, he started kind of going, "Well, these foods aren't good for you, and these foods aren't good for you, and these foods aren't good for you." And so I went from eating Sonic hamburgers pretty much every night because that's what I was craving when I was pregnant with my daughter that last trimester, to sitting on the couch and being postpartum with a newborn, my first baby, just crying and going, "I don't know what to eat and I'm so hungry." And so that fear of just everything's bad and here's this perfect little baby and I don't wanna break her. I think that the crunchy community does us a we do a disservice to ourselves, and then the community can kind of help foster this at times where there can be this sense of fear of it's all bad. And every time we wake up to something, there can be that period of time where all of a sudden we go from 0 to 60. And
Mhm.
so for me, balance has come. The most important thing I had to learn was my thoughts actually can be the most toxic thing in my environment. So
Right.
I can't go all in from a place of fear, because then I've actually created an even worse situation for myself than if I just ate that Sonic hamburger.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I'm starting to realize and teach people and encourage people with is balancing. So I've been teaching for years, let's get balanced. It's like that feels like a destination. Let's get to that balance. And then we get there and then you're balanced, right? Homeopathy brings balance. Well, what I'm starting to realize this year is we're always balancing.
Mhm.
So, and I feel like for the rest of our lives, we're going to be balancing. So I encouraged a client today that, she was like, there's every time I go backwards, because in the health and the healing journey, there can be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so every time she took a step back, she thought she did something wrong.
Mm.
And she kept trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What did I do different today that I didn't do yesterday? And so I encouraged her today with this balancing. The back and forth is just okay. We're just going to be, we're going to be doing this.
Mhm.
And so instead of like this, where people are when they first come in, we're just
Yes.
going to be like here,
Yes.
and it's just okay to walk in that. And then the whole fear of eating bad things. I talk about that a lot too, that we just the worry over your health is just as detrimental as eating the Doritos or
Mhm.
the cheeseburger occasionally,
Yes.
right? I mean, there has to be, have it sometimes and just don't worry about it.
Mhm.
Not every day,
That's right.
don't let it be habit. So I don't like the fear. I don't like the fear, and on either side, both sides can do that fear mongering.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So, I would love to hear about just your story coming into this. What kind of led you mentioned a little bit about your first baby.
Mhm.
What kind of led you into, I guess, the natural realm, but also what you do now?
Yeah. Yes. So what my first moment and having our first baby was kind of the moment of action where it was like, okay, we're going to do things differently now. But this question of what does it look like to steward our health started for me much younger. When I was in middle school, my father, who had always been very active, very vibrant, was diagnosed with, at the time, an incurable form of cancer, and he went on a clinical trial, and the result of that clinical trial was he did survive, but he was paralyzed by the chemo that saved his life. And so from that point on, there was this it was traumatic for our whole family because it was such a sudden before and after for us. And then once he was paralyzed, he was on this runaway track of medical interventions that didn't stop until his passing about 25 years later. And so from that, first I was like in this fear hijack trauma response of, oh no, what if, that really plagued me for decades. And so that was kind of the first thing I needed to wrestle through. And then my path to the other side became this real curiosity where I had to go before the Lord and just say, okay, thy will be done. And there's a place of curiosity here, and for me, that was really the place of healing, to go, "What can I do? There's much I can't, but what can I do to take care of myself?" And so from there, it started just opening the door in my 20s and then into my 30s as I was raising my children, of going, "Oh, actually, the beautiful side of the holistic approach to health is this idea of what we do actually does matter. Are we resting? Are we, living a stressed out life?" And for me, during that time period, I was working as a corporate lawyer. My first year in corporate law, I developed an autoimmune disease called Graves' disease, which is a hyperthyroid condition for those who don't know. And so I'd never had any issues. I'd never been on any medication. And I kept saying to my practitioners, what happened? Like, could this be lifestyle? Is it possible that the crazy work hours and the toxic boyfriend and the McDonald's and the coffee, 5 cups of coffee a day, and the lack of sleep and the crazy market conditions, because I came into work in 2008 when the housing market was crashing, is it possible that could have an effect? All but one said, no, no, it's just coincidence. Just coincidence. And then this one dinosaur endocrinologist that I worked with was like, I've actually kind of seen the two things correlate more times than I can understand. And that was all I needed. I was like, okay, the way I'm living matters. So that was, and I had my daughter with, I didn't end up marrying the toxic boyfriend. Praise Jesus for that. But a couple of years later, I was married, had a baby. And so that experience of actually being able to get my Graves' disease to go into remission about 6 to 12 months later by changing my lifestyle, right? By getting in a healthier relationship, by changing my diet, was the first experience I had of feeling this sense of empowerment of, oh, what I do makes a difference. And that I think is one beautiful thing about the holistic perspective is with a more allopathic view of medicine, it's just Russian roulette. Your genes are your genes and you can't control anything. And it created so much fear in me, especially given my background with my father. And so once I found holistic medicine, it's like this I can believe in because cause and effect is all around us. So why shouldn't it also be in the world of our bodies?
Mhm.
That's so good. So true.
Mhm.
Yeah. I had a big realization with my last baby. Um, that I think, so I agree. Everything that you were saying, is how I thought I believed until I was having this labor experience. I had a terrible hospital birth and then a home birth. And then this time, very long story short, I was planning a home birth, but we chose to be induced at a hospital. And that part really doesn't matter, but one big part of that experience for me was I was in prayer, like meditative prayer almost, to try to just work through some of these fears I had, um, and to help labor just move along. And I had this experience with God where I realized a lot of the way that I was using these tools I had in the crunchy community, crunchy world, all the things I had learned was to control this outcome. Like, if I do all of these things, I'm going to avoid all the things everybody around me is dealing with. And then if you make a mistake, what are people who are not crunchy going to think about me? Or if somebody does, all the things.
Mhm.
And God like really broke me of it, turned from control to stewardship,
Yes.
where I'm not doing this anymore to try to play a game of chess where like I come out the end and I win the way that I want.
Yes.
Or even my approach to people around me has changed, and trying to be a person who pushes and throws, wants everybody to do everything the way that I do it. Um, because I remember that it's been a journey, like you said, so everybody else is also on a journey and
Mhm.
not in the same place that I am. So stewarding the knowledge that I have, that God has given me for my family, for the circle of influence I have, has changed a lot of the way that I've moved forward the past few years. So I love the word stewardship has been big in my life. So I
Mm.
love that sounds like that's a big part of would you call it a ministry or
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you do currently?
Everything I do, yeah, it's my mission. It's one of my core values is stewardship because we all start in different places. And I love what you said, Bree, because there can become almost this religious element to the crunchy lifestyle where it's like, if I do this, then I will earn then I will earn what I want. I will
Yep.
earn this, this health, this well-being. And then the question on the flip side is, what did I do wrong? Right? And okay, if something's going wrong, what was it? What did I do? And so one thing that's been really helpful for me is first of all to recognize we are limited and we're in a fallen world, so it's not going to be perfect. And then the other piece of that is just recognizing the in Romans 14, it's kind of become one of my anchor points because I can bend towards judgment which is really just the flip side of fear, right? If you did something wrong, it protects me from having to risk the same story. And so it's out of fear that we push that on people. Oh, if you hadn't done X, Y, and Z, then you wouldn't be dealing with da 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 da. While there may be some truth, there is cause and effect that we face. The truth of the matter is we have limited resources, we have limited time, we have limited knowledge. We can't fight a battle on all fronts. And so Romans 14 talks about that. It's the passage where Paul is speaking to, whatever you eat, all is permissible, but also like what really matters is who are you fellowshipping with, right? But then he also says, whatever you do, whether you eat or whether you drink, it's fine. What matters is what your master is calling you to. And he says, it's the master's business whether you rise or fall, and you will rise because he is the one who basically covers you. I don't have the wording exactly right, but go look it up. It's so beautiful. And so we view everybody's differences when we're in judgment as a threat. Oh, they think, okay, iridescent light bulbs. We all need iridescent light bulbs because the other kind of light bulbs are bad for us. And oh, we need water filtration. And oh, we need to use this type of modality for healing and infrared sauna. And my husband at one point looked at me and said, we're going to go broke if we do all of these things. We can't do them all. And so that to me was the begin because I was trying to do all of them. Oh, what's another $10,000? This is going to lead to this result. This transformed so and so's life. I was always selling him on another tool that we had to have to fix the problems because I was sure that there was a solution out there somewhere if we just sacrificed enough, right? Which is a religious spirit essentially that I was operating under.
Mhm.
And when I go, okay, no, the Lord tells me what my next step is, and it's okay if someone else has something else. My job is to follow him because I'm his servant. So that remembering that has taken a lot of the pressure off to like do more, perform better, and it's kept me out of that space of judgment like you're talking about.
I love that. So when I stepped into homeopathy, it was also out of fear and control. So because what I found was going to the doctor, I never knew what to expect. I never knew what was going to happen. So going to the doctor or the dentist. So I had this lifelong fear of like when my mom would take me to the doctor or a dentist as a child, I would say, "Am I going to get a shot today?" And
Mm,
that was just my biggest fear. And she would be like, "I don't know," or "I don't think so," or whatever. And or if I was sick, every time I was sick, I had strep throat. So I went to the doctor and I got a penicillin shot. If you've
mm,
ever had one of those, that is the most awful, most painful shot that there is. And this was in the 70s. So I I had a lot of fear around not knowing what was going to happen to me at the doctor or the dentist. And then when I found homeopathy, I felt like, ooh, I can control this. I can step into this and be in control. And then that made me feel better for a short amount of time. Because then because I started using homeopathy before I learned about food and water and air and sun and all the other things.
mm,
Homeopathy was first for me. So that felt like a manageable amount of control. But then when I started learning about food, and then I tried to change everything at one time. And I was like, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that. And we have to do this and we have to do that. And eventually I remember about around when I realized I have a lot of anxiety around this. And when I recognized the anxiety that was happening in me, I literally had to take a step back and say, this is not okay. And that was just the Lord. I mean, this was before Facebook, that I realized how much anxiety I had. But then when Facebook came on the scene, that brought me a lot of anxiety because now I can see when everybody's sick. They're all
mm.
placing it on Facebook. We're throwing up. We got a fever, and I'm like, well, And so the Lord took me through this beautiful journey from fear and control, and trying to do everything at once and do too much to Stewardship. I have never even thought about that until this conversation. So I love that. And it this is why I like to teach baby steps. So when somebody is, if you're listening now and you're just stepping into the natural healthcare world, baby steps. You cannot change it all overnight. You can't even change it all in 1 year. Don't even try. Pick one thing. Do that one thing well. You feel good, everybody in the family's good, because like when I changed, now remember, this was a long time ago. This isn't even good. I mean, we know this isn't even good now, but back then, milk was bad for you. So we were all drinking almond milk,
Mhm.
right? So
Yep.
when I got rid of the junky store milk and replaced it with almond milk, the whole family was like, this is terrible. And so it took some time to get them used to drinking the almond milk, which now is absolutely not the best thing. But either way, it's baby steps. So you just get your family settled into the new thing that you're doing. And then you might have a list. You might have a list of things that you want to do, like all the things that you just listed with ultra red or infrared saunas and all the things, homeopathy and supplements and herbs and vitamins and essential oils and all the cleaning and
Mhm.
your water, and just make a list. And then
Right.
you just leave it there. Ask the Lord, give the list to the Lord. What do you want me to do
Mhm.
with this? And wait on them, and just take those baby steps, because trying to do it all at one time is going to drive you and your family crazy. And fear should never ever lead us. But I'm just thankful for how the process he took me through to show me how to steward my health without fear. And
Mhm.
now that's what I get to encourage people with. And I know Bree does too, with her clients, and then with all of our students. Just, just we're going to start using this word, Bree, in class.
Aw,
We're going to
Stewardship.
steward our health instead of being in fear about it.
that's right. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I think it's helpful to remember too, and this is something I have to keep coming back to again and again, is that we know that that bad trees don't bear good fruit. So whatever changes I'm making, if I'm making them from a place of like fear and oppression, as opposed to feeling like the spirit's really leading me, then what I'm going to create is more fear and oppression, right? I've controlled the problem, but I haven't really healed the root of the problem. And so even in no matter how good the thing we might choose is, if we choose it from a place of fear, and the Lord blesses it, because for years fear was really driving me, because I needed to heal from the trauma of my dad's illness. So much that I did was in reaction to, instead of from a place of accepting how the Lord worked a lot of good through his story, as hard as it was. And then it wasn't until I'd reckoned with that in a deep enough way that I was able to go, okay, for love of the life that God has given me, as a result of that love for my life, here are some shifts that I feel like he's calling me to make. These little tiny changes.
Mhm. Well, and I love that the parable of the talents that you used before, where the ultimate goal is to present them before the Lord to be pleasing to him,
Yes.
not to make something of it for ourselves or for the people around us. And by default, we get to enjoy that, right? Like it's beneficial, but it's not the end game.
That's right.
So I think that's very important to keep in mind. And I think you mentioned this before we even started recording, that to be able to, well, maybe you can say that. You said something about the
Yeah.
end. Yeah, you
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, so the vision that's been very helpful and orienting for me in my life is to think about the end goal, and at the end of the parable of the talents, the Lord says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in little, I will set you over more. Enter into the joy of your master." And he says that to both the 5 talent and the 2 talent servant. And if you're not familiar with the story, go and read it. But really the point was not how much were you given, but what did you do with what you had? And so exercise is a tricky one for me. It's not something that I get excited about. It's not something that I look forward to necessarily. I find it a little tricky to fit into my schedule at times, because of that, right? And so I've really needed to do a lot of work around how can I love this effort, because I know it's an important part of longevity. And so for me, whenever I have a habit tracker, and I'm happy to make that available to any of you who are listening. And at the top, it talks about, why does this matter? Why is this essential as a habit? And so for me, it's being healthy enough and vibrant enough to get down on the floor and play with my grandchildren and my great grandchildren. That's why I moved today, is so that in 50 years I'm around and I'm investing in their lives. I'm helping lighten the load for my children and maybe even for my grandchildren when they have children, and able to be fully present for as long as God has me on earth. And I can't control whether that happens or not, but I can control the inputs that I do. I can control that I actually do the sit-ups and drink the water and get the rest and love my people and love my life, live a life of gratitude. And so having that end goal where I can say at the end of my life, I used everything you gave me. I moved my body. I loved the people that you put in my life. I lived a life of gratitude for the things that you gave me, no matter how hard some of them were to love at the time. Ultimately that actually is going to do far more for us as far as well-being than if we discovered the right, there's no right supplement necessarily. There are good ones. I mean, Melissa, as taught me when you and I had our conversation, it's like balance is something that's really dependent on, where are you right now? How can we bring you into proper balance? What depends where you are. And so far more important that we get the foundational things in good order. And then there will be these things that then we add on, right? Then we go from there.
Yeah, I love it. So, let's speak for the last few minutes to busy moms. What words of wisdom do you both have for busy, homeschooling or not, moms? How can they steward? How are you stewarding your family's health while you're so busy? How can they do it? Do you have any ideas for them? So that, I love what you just said about taking care of yourself so that you can be present and be, for your grandchildren. I just did a reel the other day about that. Like, moms, we have to take care of ourselves, because you want to be there and be able to play with your grandchildren, right? So stop putting ourselves on the back burner. With homeopathy, nobody has to go on the back burner. You can help yourself and help help the children. Now then, yeah, like what you just said with exercise, that's another layer, right? We have to find the time or the motivation or the energy or whatever. But we'd love to hear both of your thoughts on, if words of wisdom for these mamas listening.
You want to go first, Anna?
I will go first. I have some thoughts on this. This is one of the things that I talk a lot about on my podcast, She Considers a Field, because it is such a challenge we tend to, especially as mamas who, whenever we're all hands on deck all the time, whenever the kids are kind of always around, I call it resistance training, because there will come a day when they're gone, right? Whether they're in activities or they're working or they've launched. And then we really can have a rhythm that can look the same most days. But at this point, when my kids were very small, every quiet time moment that I picked, okay, I'll get up at 5:30 in the morning. Well, then the baby started getting up at 5:30 in the morning. Okay, I'll do it after I put the baby down at 6. Well, then the toddler was awake. And so part of it, I think, is it's important that we focus on our efforts rather than the results. Because we might think, well, I used to have 30 minutes with the Lord every day. And then we can be tempted to be in judgment if we don't pull that off. But the goal is, if we are women who are committed to sit down in our little quiet chair every day and be there for a minute or 2 minutes. The book Atomic Habits by James Clear, it talks about the habits that you form need to be 2-minute habits. If we are women of commitment who will sit down and do that activity every day, even if it only lasts a minute or two, then ultimately we will become the woman who's able to do the 30 minutes and so on as the season permits. And so my first thing that I would suggest is look at your priorities, get really clear on, what are my priority relationships, God, and then husband, and then children, and how are those doing? How am I doing in stewarding each of those? How is my health? Am I able to get rest? Do I give myself permission to nap? How's my mental health and my emotional state? And then look at one area that's feeling really challenged and pick something that will take 2 minutes to commit to, and then keep track of it. That's it. And like I said, I'll send the link for I actually have a whole workbook called From Overwhelmed to Overcomer, where I take people through this process where it says, what are all the things that are out of order right now? And if you're anything like most of the women I know, that we feel like we have a long list. But once we put it all down on paper, there are some themes that show up. And a friend of mine has the most beautiful question whenever we're out of order in an area. The question she asks is, why are you abandoning yourself? So I find that like that's oriented me so often, like with this exercise question, as I've been struggling to build rhythm around exercise. Why am I abandoning myself? This future dream is out there. Why am I letting it go in favor of lesser priorities? And so yes, pick something little and just pick one thing, because faithfulness begets more faithfulness. Just like Melissa said, when you have that one thing that you've started to win at where you're like, I'm getting in that 60 ounces of water a day, I'm doing it. And we start to feel like I'm a woman of my word. I set out to do this and I did it. I set out to do this and I did it. Then that compounds on itself. Same with our children. We need to help them love taking care of themselves. We need to help them see it as a gift that they give to themselves, and help them just recognize the cause and effect of, oh, it may feel fun to stay up late, but then I'm cranky the next day and my behavior's out of order. So I have consequences and I'm not able to enjoy time with my friends. Is it really worth it? And so we are trying to find that balance at the age that our kids are, of 12 and under, of giving them a little room to make decisions, and then also helping them see, okay, what really happened? What's the full scope of this decision that we just made? And then we also have some expectations, like, when you've got healthy things on your plate, it's a 5-bite rule. Those little tiny things that we've implemented over time, but just tiny, tiny little baby steps, because what we don't want is for them to do what I did when I went off to college, where the first thing that I did was buy a 12-pack of Diet Coke and ramen noodles because I wasn't allowed to eat that when I was home, right? Didn't take long for me to realize that didn't feel very good, but there's this sense of like, where, let us fall in love with the healthy freedoms, right? The permission to. So those are a few things I would suggest, but so simple, just like Melissa talks about, and I'm sure you all say it quite regularly on here. So simple, so little, and let the good crowd out the less ideal.
Thank you. Thank you for that. How about you, Bree?
Yeah, I will piggyback on the little things, because that was one of the things that came to mind right away. Very practically speaking, I have the past few years really leaned into adding literally one sustainable thing in maybe a couple areas, but like when I started homeschooling, I really thought God asked me to homeschool and told me to homeschool because I was going to be really good at this. And very quickly learned it was actually not because of that. So I had to literally, my first thing was a math curriculum for my oldest, because he likes math. That was literally the only thing I committed to for 1 year. Now I did add in reading books with him and stuff, but the weight was different because my commitment was only to that one thing. Then the next school year, I added one other thing. The next school year, I added one more kid, and so I think that one thing, and that felt big, but I would look at other people sometimes and I would suddenly start to be like, I'm so behind. My kids are they're never going to graduate. And I had to rein it back in. What has God asked of me? And I would approach these prayerfully. What is my thing? So that, for me personally, if I'm the person who's like, I'm going to go from waking up at 7 to 5:30, that is a bad idea. I would go from 7 to 6:30. That feels sustainable. I can do that long term. I'm not going to wake up at 5:30 I'm going to do it for 2 weeks. Then I'm going to be so tired. I'm going to go back to sleep until 7 because that was a bad idea. So sustainable is my key when I make a change somewhere. But I would say maybe my biggest advice to any person is always something I've learned from my husband and Melissa. Boundaries, but meaning that our mentors told us to come up with pillars in our lives when we were first married. And my husband's a pastor. So pillars are those things that our life revolves around. They cannot be, they're like your big stones in the bottom of your jar. They have to be there. They're priorities, and that is how you structure your life. So for us, it's our marriage. So date nights, getting out together, even if it's in our home date night, but that our world revolves around that. His job is a big one because he is a pastor. So how our availability, everything I do, as I have a calling to ministry as well. So anything that interferes with that, I say no. It's by default, it's a no, because that's already been decided. So that's been really helpful for me as a mom. The more it is tempting to let life just get out of control and start letting life happen to me. When I go back to the basics, like, okay, all of these things as my kids get older, there's much more to do, more kids, more stuff, more ministry, more school. I go back to, well, is it interfering with my 5 pillars? Well, then I say no. Even this work that I've started doing, my first commitment was to ministry, my marriage, homeschooling my children, making sure we still Sabbath as a family. So I give what I can give to work, and that's it. So it takes out, and this is why I feel like it's been helpful practically, it takes out decision fatigue. Like, I don't have to overthink. If something's presented to me, does it fit in here? No, I say no. And I've seen the fruit of that pay off. And it is like, I can give the best to what God has asked of me. So that is different. Not everybody has the same priorities. And I've become okay with that the past, I mean, probably since I've had kids, it's been more empowering, but I think that's all.
I love it. So you can obviously all see why I love Bree so much. I mean, what? Like, Bree's taught me a lot too. So, but I love what you were talking about with the boundaries. You know how women, a lot of women don't know how to say no. And it's because, well, some women, maybe it's because we're afraid of what they'll think of us if we say no. But some, or maybe not just some women, maybe some situations. And then other situations, it's because we want to help. We want to do all the things, and we want to help all the people. And so my piece of advice for all of you busy mamas trying to steward your family's health well is to ask the Lord. And I mean, ask him about every single thing, right? I love what you said, Bree, where decision fatigue. So if it doesn't fit in here, because you already have that laid out, you and Kyle have already laid that out. You know what those pillars are, you know where that box is, and you know what can fit in it and what can't. But not everybody has done that. I know that I have not done that. So if something comes up that I want to do, there's something coming up next month that I want to do really bad. And but I'm waiting on the Lord. I'm just waiting. And people keep asking me, Melissa, are you coming? Are you coming? And I'm like, I don't know yet. Well, we've got I mean, people have said we've got a place for you. We've saved a spot for you, and you can stay with us. And I'm like, I have to hear from him. I have to hear that it's okay, that he wants me to do this, because I don't want to waste time, and I don't want to waste money. And I don't want, and that really that's it. I don't want to waste time and money. I know it's going to be good, but is it what's best? And so that's the other thing is there's a difference between what's good and what's best.
Mhm.
So you have to ask the Lord. You just have to. And I mean, it could be the tiniest little thing, like, do I take Melissa and Bree's next Gateway class? Ask the Lord. I'm not kidding. I mean, don't, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else or your family. And so you have to weigh that. This has been a great
So
conversation.
inspiring. I
Yeah.
feel great. Thank you, ladies.
This is
Anna, thank
amazing.
you so much for just being here. Was there anything else on your heart that you wanted to share today?
Oh, I mean, I'm just gonna offer this, like, wherever you are today, love that place, you know? Love that place. No matter how hard it is, no matter how, you know, how much you're struggling, we have to find the gift today in order for us to move into a more beautiful tomorrow. It's like it's not until we've unlocked the gift, and it doesn't always happen this way, but at best, at my best moments with the Lord, when I have mined the gift from the current season, that's how we steward well, because then it's never wasted, right? To go, "I will love every day you give me, even the hard, because if nothing else, this is gonna be your testimony one day to encourage someone else." So just find that way to love it today.
So good. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you,
Thank
Anna.
you for being with us today, Anna. And so you guys, if you look in the show notes, you should, or the description of this video, if you're watching the video or the show notes of the podcast, you'll find more information about Anna and how to find her. And we just thank you all for tuning in. And we just pray that you will steward your family's health well and 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 use what he's given you and use it wisely. So thanks for being here.